what we're going to do is now we've kind of understood his intentions. So why don't you just walk up to me and then you're going to hand me the leash.
No jokes.
So just walk up to me and then just hand me the leash. And I'm just going to use this as a barrier. Good. Yep. There we go. Cool. And then you just kind of back away. We're going to do some more tests. Okay. So what I'm going to do is completely ignore him. So it's just like your friend. Like he got used to him after a little bit. And then like if I were to like deke him out right now and freak out, he wouldn't like that. He would go nuts. If I put my hand in his face, he would fear bite me. He's got no other choice. He actually, you know, he's afraid of me. So what I'm doing right now is basically flooding him, or what I would consider flooding in this scenario, where I'm basically letting him know that because he's around me, I'm not doing anything to harm him. Good. Good. And you could call him? Good. So that was a good encounter. Are you nervous? Okay, cool. Good. 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 So I want to make sure that, you know, I'm not pushing you guys out of your comfort zone either. So that was good. And so I didn't want to drop the leash, but because I wasn't going to be like, hey, what are you doing back there, and freak him out. So that was a good encounter. So we just call him back. So that's, again, part of operant conditioning is rewarding that good stuff. So like when he gets to you and we had those encounters, just really like, yay, good boy. That's a big deal for him. So we're going to do it again. You're going to try to transfer me the leash. The only reason why I dropped it is because I didn't want to make any quick movements. Sit down and see. I think that'll calm him down a bit more. I mean, he's definitely going to want to like go to you, but at the same time, if you're like in a, good boy, Jax. Shh, it's okay. Good. I feel like one of those bullfighters. Like, good boy. So I'm not going to give him eye contact. I'm just kind of like, good boy, bud. All this is positive for him. So any moment that like he's not barking at me is like kind of points for us. Good. And I'm just not giving him my back again if I don't have to, only because that's where you'll find, that's where like I find, and he's probably more smelling the cot because there's been a lot of dogs on it, but that's where I find like dogs will be kind of cowards where they'll like bite your back end. It's like punching somebody in the back, you know, when you're not facing them. It's a sucker punch. So I'm avoiding that, and I'm letting him sniff the cot, and I'm just making this a positive experience. Good boy. And it is freaking him out a little bit, but it's okay. Good. 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 And I'm just kind of just moving around a little bit. So moving this around. Good. Good. Hi, Jax. Good boy. And I'm listening to his breathing is what I'm doing. So like panting is good. When you don't hear panting anymore, that means he's loading on something. So I don't want to hear that. So that's one thing that you guys, you know, just food for thought when you're out. Listen for his breathing. It's like the same thing when you're like watching somebody if they're getting really tense. Like if you watch like MMA or something, like everything changes about them because they're about to go into battle. Same thing like with a dog. Good. Good. And really what I'm doing is my cues are all on his breathing. So that's what's, and it's hard because I can't hear because of the other dogs, but good. Good. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to like push your limits. No petting, no eye contact, no asking him to do something, things like that. I'm not going to push that situation. Good boy. Good. And that was a positive experience. Good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay pretty neutral. So I'm not going to face him. I'm going to give him just like this. Because if you face him, that's confrontational a bit, but I'm also not going to turn my back because then that gives him an opportunity to sucker punch me. So I'm kind of just going to always have my body slanted. Good. And that's just something that I learned over time of like working with these types of dogs, of what they like and what they don't like. And that's why I'm doing that. And if he comes to you guys or looks at you guys just ignore him as much as possible. Just because it's kind of like you on the sidelines, and if you look at him, you're encouraging him to come to you. If you talk to him, you're definitely encouraging him. So you guys just remain neutral, and we'll just keep making this a positive experience. And I have a good feeling that you guys know pretty well that it is fear. He's not like a man-eater. He's very young. different maturities, but I find with German Shepherds, the reason why primarily, so I always try to find the like, okay, why is he doing it? But then also, can we fix it? Yes. But then also the main reason why it occurred initially is when he's like hurting you to push you back, he's protecting you. So you need to have a better relationship with him where you're more on the like, hey, quit the, you know what? Hold on. I just gotta focus on what he's doing. So you gotta focus on like when he's like immediately like, hey, you gotta correct him and say, no. It's like kids. Just making sure that like, you're gonna have to correct that behavior like immediately when it happens, because it sounds silly that like he thinks that you guys aren't capable of doing that for yourselves. When you are, you just don't know how to do it. So it's him being a brat. He's telling everybody off that comes to your house. He's telling everyone off he's uncomfortable with. He's that kid that's like flipping everybody off when they're like 6. You're like, really? You're not gonna look at the kid and say like, what's your problem? You're gonna be like, where's this kid's parents, right? So we got to start correcting that behavior. You'll notice a significant difference. You guys have to start taking the wheel, and that's where it's lacking. Because I tell people this, that every time you allow him to bark at another person, like literally every bark forward towards another person, you're enabling him. You're allowing him to do that. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So, but what I would also suggest is like you're not in a situation where you're like, well, how do I correct it? We know it's bad. We don't like it. It's out of control. And that's what I'm going to teach you guys. And I'm glad that you waited until a professional guided you through it, because like I said, if you were to like physically correct him in those really tense situations, like the first 5 minutes, he could redirect on you just because he's too built up. But now his attention is just now towards the vacuum in the back. And okay, do you have any questions so far?
Is it a similar situation with the dogs?
Yes. I think the dogs is going to be more stimulation on the leash, because that's where a lot of that anxiousness is coming from, is him on the leash. Like when we did the test before, when you said go, his reactivity subsided tremendously, because he was like, okay, I'm not really getting held back. But I would say like the dog reactivity is he doesn't know how to socialize. Now that's not to be confused with, well, he's good with my brother, my sister, my aunts, my neighbor's dog. That's different. That's his family. He doesn't know the difference. Like dogs don't do that. When a dog has known a dog since they were puppies, regardless of if they're litter mates or it's a Shih Tzu and it's a Shepherd, they're family. Like we're like, no, that's our neighbor. That's my brother-in-law. That's whatever. Those guys are, so that's not to be confused with that, because he may be okay with certain dogs that he's known his whole life. The socialization is exactly how it sounds, of like just like with people. I may be like really good with like my close group of friends, but I can't go to the mall because I'll freak out. Like that could be a possibility. Same thing with him, is he's like no new dogs because he'll freak out. So you have to be able to be like, okay, fine, you don't like whatever, but you're not going to be a jerk. And you're not going to do stuff like that. So you just got to keep him in line. Okay. Do you know what I mean? I mean, in theory, could we make him more confident in him like kids? Possibly. But because he's, not all dogs are good with kids. Not all dogs are good with strangers, and that's okay. It's not like a default. That's just their personality. But there is going to be there has to be punishment and discipline for the dog acting on those things, right? It's different if you're like, I don't like that guy at the end of the bar. Fine, that's your word, whatever. It's a free country, but you can't go punch him in the face. Yeah. That's not cool. Same thing with dogs. Like, okay, if you don't like kids because you've never seen them and they're weird, I'm okay with that. If you don't like men because you aren't socialized with them, I'm also okay with that. But you're not going to make yourself look bad by freaking out. And that's what we got to, but at the same time, when we talk about positive and negatives and just punishment and discipline in general, again, when we're not correcting and disciplining the behavior that you don't like, it'll never, ever, ever go away. Unless he gets out of old age and just doesn't bark anymore and it subsides, but that's silly. We don't want to ignore that behavior. So anyway, so we're going to start correcting that when it happens and then moving from there. But and we'll just kind of figure out what works. I would suggest Probably with just starting off with a prong collar, only because it's going to give you the ultimate control with the least amount of force. And that's my goal. I want to be effective, humane, and efficient. I never want to your correction is going to be different than your correction. My correction is going to be different than your correction, and so on and so forth. So if I can give you guys a tool that'll be universal, that will be like less wham, like the slip collar is nice, it works. But sometimes you have to really correct a dog physically to get their attention. And I think the prong collar, because it's safer, that'll be the better option. Now, the goal with any tools that we use is to not have it forever. It's just to teach. So we keep it on for a little bit just to teach them like what heel is, what leave it is, and also reinforce. When you're out in public, I would probably wear it just because you never know. It's like, why do we have seatbelts? Why do we have fire extinguishers? Why do we have all these things that, like, you never know? You know, burglary alarm systems and all that stuff. You just never know. So having that on when you're out is a better idea. And you may use it once every 3 days if you're good at what you do and you do it right. Are you familiar with them? You just know what they look like?
I've seen them,
Yeah, so basically what it does is they're rounded little points. And so the invention of the prong collar is basically to evenly distribute pressure. So instead of like choking a dog out and causing all this pain to the dog's neck and causing damage to their larynx and their trachea, and then ultimately just choking the dog out, they created a collar that put so they're points. They're little tiny. They're not sharp or anything. I'll explain that later. But and basically what it goes, boom, 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 boom. It goes all the way around. So it's like studded tires versus, good. It's like studded tires versus, it just doesn't like my hand, so that freaked him out. Again, it's like studded tires or snow tires versus like regular. You're gonna have more traction, and so it's gonna be more effective when you're stuck, if you will. And so that's why it's made. The reason why, and I always tell people this for your education, the reason why people don't like them is because you can get a really crappy brand that are square, jagged. You can size them wrong. People can correct them wrong. So there's all sorts of different things like why people don't like them. But it's the same thing with anything. You know, somebody is an idiot and drives drunk and crashes into somebody. We're not banning cars because we're like, that's an idiot. I'm not. I got to go to work, right? You're noticing a difference in behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. Nice, buddy. Good. So I'm personally noticing a difference in his demeanor with you. I don't know if you're catching on, but I'm watching how he's acting with you, and he's more like, where are we going, okay? And that's really good because remember I said the core of his problems are stemming strictly from, I'm in charge, I'll take charge, I'm in charge, I'll take charge, I'll protect you. And of course he doesn't have thumbs and he can't drive a car, so that's not the case here. So you have to make sure that like, and this is the first step of like, no dude, and you've known that. It's just, how do I put my dog back into place? Because it's not healthy for the dog making all these decisions and being stressed and barking at people who are neutral. Leave it. Good. So even faster than that would be better. He was reactive because he was, why not? What are you going to do about it? You've never punished him for it, right? And I've had people say, well, I tell them, dogs aren't kids. Dogs don't speak English. You can't tell them. They bite each other. They throw each other to the ground. They'll kill each other. Like, that's how they talk. Like, they're not politically correct. Like, that's the way that they interact. It's just, it is what it is. So you haven't done anything about it. And then also, because he's taken that, I'm going to do what I want, and you are basically, I always tell people, like, you become a statue on rollerblades, or you're just skating around with the dog, like, and they're just, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Who's that? Bark, 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 or get out of here. Bark, boom, boom, and then, yep.
Leave it.
Good. Now, you're punishing him for that. And you're like, hey, stop. Where that would have been a thing. A 5-minute thing. Good. Wonderful. You see that? Like, you can't, it's uncomparable the amount of factuality that goes into actually just disciplining your dog once or twice a day will create a better relationship. He growled at me where before he came in guns blazing, you corrected him. He looked at you, he looked at me, he sat behind you. It's awesome. Really cool. So you're taking control of your relationship to teach him that because it's not, again, don't think of it as alpha. That word gets thrown around way too much in the dog industry. And don't think of it as like all you're saying is like, hey, you don't have to do this anymore. Like, I'm in charge. He's going to go, all that stress and anxiety that he had, well, it's not an overnight thing. If he walks out that door and sees a guy, he's going to bark. But it's going to be better, and you're going to know what to do, which before, shot in the dark.